Okay, in this video we're going to simulate the bite registration appointment. So once you fabricated your upper and or lower bite blocks, depending on the scenario, you're going to have to acquire a centric occlusal record from your clients. We only did the lower, so therefore we want to have a good sense now. And this scenario here simulates the client. We don't have a real client to work with for the video, but we're going to use this mounting to simulate our client. So you want to have a good sense how the patient is coming together. Make sure that I can see that the midlines are lining up, looking at it from a frontal view, and I have a nice intercuspation into centric with the lower posteriors. And it feels like everything is coming together, okay? When I take my bite block and insert it inside the patient's mouth, it should fit, shouldn't cause any discomfort. It should be stable, so you can verify the stability. Obviously, there's no retention, because it's a passive fit, but nevertheless, should be able to work with it. Now, having the patient come together at first, clearly they're not closing as they were before. Okay? So therefore, you can make some adjustments and bring the height of the occlusal rim a little bit lower, but we still want to have enough wax there to get a nice imprint of the upper posterior teeth. And how we're going to do that? Well, what you're going to have to do is heat up the lower bite rim with your alcohol torch. So you're going to remove it from the patient's mouth, and you're going to gently heat up the top layer of the occlusal rim ever so slightly. You might want to move back and forth so you don't over melt the wax. Place it back in the patient's mouth. And have the patient close down into centric occlusion. Still not all the way down. I could squeeze it, but I'm going to leave it just to prove a point. So it's not all the way down. We're going to let that cool off in the patient's mouth for about 20-30 seconds. And then have the patient open. And now we have a little imprint where we have our high spots. So we can take our blade and cut this back. Just give it a little shape here. And I know this is still high. So what I could do before I go back in the patient's mouth is heat up the surface of the occlusal rim some more. And the idea here is to get an equal amount of imprint of the maxillary teeth up against the occlusal rim. Quite often, for a scenario like this, you're probably going to go straight to a finish. You won't have the opportunity of trying in the teeth. So it's very important that you get this done very accurately. So back in we go. Make sure everything is nice and stable. We're going to ask our client to close down until their teeth touch this time around. The wax is relatively soft. and now I can feel that the casts are coming together. Okay? And we're going to let that cool off for about 20-30 seconds. I'm going to leave it a little bit longer because I don't have saliva that will cool off the wax. So I'm going to let that cool off a little bit better, or a little bit longer. Just going to air chill it. So now when I ask the patient to open, we have imprint on both sides. If you don't, feels like I don't have enough here, I can certainly add some wax here. And go back and ask the patient to close down again. So you want to have an equal amount of indentation of the upper teeth against the occlusal rim on both sides to make sure that it's nice and stable. So I got a little more of an imprint in the back. You can also carve this down completely to have a flat surface. Create a box like we do with our complete upper and lower scenarios, and use bi-registration PVS material to acquire the centric. You can certainly do that. Okay? But for most cases, just a wax bite is sufficient. Okay? So if I were to remove this bite block now from the patient's mouth, place it back onto my model and up against the opposing, now I have a very positive position of how the patient is coming together. Before I had this rocking effect back and forth, now I don't. Now I feel confident about mounting my lower model up against my upper using this bi-registration. So there's no rocking. I'm trying to rock the models interiorly, posteriorly. Everything feels good. Left to right. My midlines are lining up again, and the natural teeth are touching. Okay? I do have this interior overjet here, as you can see there. And I also have that in the patient's mouth as well. Okay, so little signs that you can, or landmarks you can assess in making sure that you're at the correct position. Because like I said, sometimes you're going to go from a bi-registration straight to a finish, or you don't have an opportunity to try in the teeth to make sure that you have the bite correct. This is your only chance. Okay, on the next video, we are going to have obviously the models mounted. We're going to survey them, design them, bend wires, and start setting up teeth.